Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What is something that happened to you despite the odds of it being incredibly low? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I play this game called GeoGuessr, where they show you randomly generated Google Street View images, and you have to guess where the location is on the map you're playing. Global, US, UK, etc. There are millions and millions of images, and once I got one that was directly in front of my childhood home. I got hit by 2 cars within the span of an hour. I had never seen a car accident prior, and I was crossing at a pedestrian crossing while the light was green and it was daytime, so there was no visibility issue or anything. The first one, I was walking my bike across, as one is supposed to do here, and the driver claimed she simply didn't see me. I went flying to the ground, but I was mostly fine. There were some scrapes and bruises, but my bike's wheels were so bent out of shape they couldn't spin properly. After that, I walked home with my bike to bring it to a repair place, crossed another pedestrian crossing, and got hit by another car. Just an all-around bad day. When I was in middle school, there was an ad campaign or contest of M&Ms where you could supposedly win $1 million if you found a gray one. I bought a bag of M&Ms out of a vending machine and was eating them in class. I noticed the gray one and showed it to my friend sitting next to me. I was about to eat it when he stopped me and reminded me that it was valuable. I took it up with my teacher, who actually stopped class to call the company about it. What they ended up telling him was that the contest had already ended, so the best they could do was mail me a free bag of M&Ms. It was soul-crushing. I don't think I even bothered redeeming the free bag. I kept the gray M&M in a little plastic Easter egg in a little treasure box with other treasures of mine, like autographed ticket stubs and other similar things, but eventually threw it away. I was once stuck on a crowded elevator in Manhattan. The elevator shut down, and since it was the early 90s, no one had phones or ways to call anyone. There was one of those glass elevators, so we could see the lobby and nearby hallway, but we were like 30 floors up, and no one had walked by for at least an hour. Just as people started to panic, 2 guys walked by, saw us, opened the door enough to let air in, got help, and saved us. Those 2 guys were George Wendt and John Ratzenberger, aka Norman Cliff from Cheers. To make it even rarer, they were at the hotel to visit Ted Danson. They went and got him once we were out, and they were all super nice and took pictures, signed autographs, and everything. TL, DR, Norman Cliff from Cheers saved us from a stuck elevator, and we got to meet them and Ted Danson. On 2 successful days, I walked up to the DMV counter to get my license renewed. On the first day, after waiting in line for about 20 minutes, I walked up to the counter, and as soon as I said hello, the power went out. I waited for 15 minutes until they closed the office. On the next day, it was busier, and I was in line for about an hour. I walked up to the counter, and as soon as I said, "I'm back," to the same agent, the power went out. While riding my bike when I was around 9 years old, a several foot long and $half diameter pine tree branch impaled my left temple in such a way that it narrowly missed my ear, my eye, and my brain. I was unconscious on the ground for an unknown amount of time. I awoke and walked into the backyard, and my dad looked like he saw a ghost. He then placed one hand on the side of my head and ripped out the branch with the other. Other than a few stitches, I made it out unscathed. My twin brother and I were born months prematurely due to our biological mom being on drugs. We were both immediately rushed to a children's hospital and placed on ventilators. We weren't expected to survive. Our biological mom was at a different hospital being taken care of after our birth and never attempted to return to us. A representative of CPS eventually reached out to a local foster parent who had tons of experience and certifications in childcare. She took us in, nurtured us to health, loved us, and ended up adopting us both so we wouldn't be separated. I call her Mom, and she left this earth on June 9th, 2016. She was our guardian angel then, and I know she still is to this day. I believe many kids get lost and mistreated in the system. My brother and I were a couple of the lucky ones. I used to always run into my mom's best friend at the most random places around town. A few years ago, I moved 3,000 miles across the country. A couple of months ago, I was walking my dog, and who did I run into? My mom's best friend. She was visiting her sister, who lives literally on the next street over from me. Our houses can't be more than 1,000 feet apart. Picture this. I'm at the airport, running late for my flight, and of course, the security line is a mile long. Just when I'm about to resign myself to missing my plane, the person in front of me turns around and says, "Hey, I have a spare first class ticket. Want it?" It turns out they had won it in a contest but couldn't use it. Talk about winning the travel lottery. When I was about 10, I went skiing at a small Swiss resort called Klosters. I accidentally took someone else's ski boots at the airport. Our ski boots had the same branded bag and he took mine. I even opened it to check inside to make sure it was mine, but upon seeing a red pair of boots inside, I was convinced it was mine. And the same for him. Well, we were both wrong. The bag belonged to another Swedish boy named Anders, whose name was on the boots I later discovered. Anyway, the next day, his mother came over to our chalet and swapped boots, and that was the end of it. 5 years later, I was at a summer camp and became very good friends with a boy named Anders. One day, he had a t-shirt with the ski resort Klosters on it. I said, "Wow, I went there too." He said, "How funny, but when I went, some idiot stole my ski boots." That was me. I mean, the odds of that are pretty crazy. I remember a story somewhere online where parents took a picture of their kid at like Niagara Falls or something, and in the background was like another kid, and it turns out those people ended up getting married, and they saw the photo like 20 years later. So, I mean, things like that happen. It's pretty crazy, but cool story. When I was 24, a car accident put me in a month-long coma. I didn't see a light or anything. I just felt myself slip away into a chasm of darkness, and I fought with everything to live. I flatlined 5 times and underwent trauma surgery, 8 units of blood plasma. I'm sure that gave me a lot of interesting dreams too. Then a month of sleep. Then I woke up. I remember being angry that the hospital room windows blinds were open. It was so bright. I woke up intubated, chest tubes, 12-gauge needles in both arms, all left ribs broken, left humerus broken, so thoroughly that a titanium rod was hammered through the arms. The marrow running into the entire length of it, shattered L4, 5, and crushed C6 and 7. TBI, closed head injury. I think that's it. Oh, bruised liver and spleen. And of course, exploratory surgery. Then rehab. So much rehab. I had to live at a rehabilitation facility for a month or so. You really find out what you're made of in a situation like that. I wanted to crawl into a ball and give up, but I fought so hard every day to learn how to walk again and tie my shoes. I had to learn how to do everything again. Think, talk, and comprehend. My left arm was completely mangled. I thought I looked like a velociraptor. I climbed the steepest mountain of pain and perseverance to regain full functionality of my left arm and hand. Now I even yo-yo with both hands, so I'm definitely doing much better. I now have a difficult time even connecting my memories to who I was back then. I spent the next 2 decades being prescribed tons of opiates. That sucked. I called bullshit on that cycle and quit everything in 2020. I'm so much happier now. There was a moment in the first rehab that I found myself staring at the different bright, colorful rubber bands used for strength training. The colors were so beautiful, and they imprinted onto my soul, and I was struck with this monumental feeling of gratitude. I felt that feeling every morning since I woke up. Since September 17th, 1998, I've worked hard to become whole again. One good thing that happened, though, I was born into the Jehovah's Witness cult. I hated every single second of it. The head injury somehow knocked all the dogma and indoctrination out of my head. It was the weirdest thing. Before the coma, I was afraid of the sky falling, and I always felt guilty, ashamed, and scared. Then afterwards, it was like my brain got reset. Honestly, all of the pain and horrors of that accident were worth it because it set me free. It showed me who my parents were too. They wanted to let me die, no blood transfusions, dumb JW rule. But unfortunately, my wife was in control of those decisions. I don't know why I'm talking about all this. Maybe I just needed to get it out. Maybe it'll help someone. I hope it helps someone. I got type 1 diabetes, despite the disease not at all running in either side of my family. I got it right after my 21st birthday. I had to switch majors at the last minute, wounds heal way slower, chronic fatigue and some level of weight gain just happened now. Regardless of how well managed they are, that and the psychological effects of being chained to medications for life really weigh on me. I'm thankful for modern medicine, but being an outdoor person, there's something about never being able to just camp without bringing needles, sugars, emergency insulin, etc. If I remember right, I want to say that about 5% of diabetes are type 1, and less than 1% of those 5% get it from circumstances not related to genetics. Basically, I could have won the lottery twice, but got sick instead. We were driving behind an incredibly drunk person at night on a winding country road, keeping our distance while the drunkard was going all over the road. We were on the phone with the police. Heading up a hill, the drunkard managed to stay directly in her lane for a minute when, all of a sudden, a car flew over the hill toward us. She swerved to try to avoid the lady in front of us. Keep in mind that the drunk lady was in her lane at this point, so there should be no reason this other car should hit us. Either way, they hit the drunk lady's car, drove into a ditch, and sped away. The drunk lady's car slowly rolls backwards into ours. I figure something bad happened to the lady, so I jump out. She's fine, she's just crying. She mentally couldn't function though, so I walked her to the edge of the road. I went to get in her car and drive it to the edge. Unfortunately, she had wet herself before getting out of the car. Anyway, apparently the car that caused the accident was found up the road. Two girls had been high on something, stole their parents' car, and went on a crazy joyride that ended in them slamming into this drunk lady. Halfway through writing this, I realized this may sound like something that happens all the time in certain areas, but I'm a middle-aged man now, and have lived in this area my whole life, and have not come across someone so impaired driving a car before or since. When I was 15, I went to summer camp and had a bit of a fling with this girl I didn't like very much. I was quite relieved when we parted ways to go home. She texted me a bit, but I hadn't responded, which was a bit of a dick move, but I was only 15. This was around 1999, so I wasn't expecting to ever see her again. Anyway, a week after camp, I went with my dad to Paris for a week. Guess who was in the effing room next door at the hotel, on holiday with her mom? My dad thought it was hilarious, and would always wave at them at breakfast, etc. As my life has progressed, I have routinely managed to bump into exes on holidays. My first holiday with my now wife resulted in us staying in the same hotel as an old girlfriend. And literally less than a year ago, I was in Spain with my wife and kids, and another ex-girlfriend ended up staying in our hotel with her family. I haven't even had that many girlfriends, but it has convinced me to never even bother trying to have an affair. I'd be caught immediately, probably in the planning stages. When I was a teenager, we were driving down a remote rural highway, my mom driving, my dad in the passenger seat, and me in the back. There were not many cars on the road at all when my dad said, "What's that?" pointing up toward the sky out of the windshield. Just a beat after that, all of a sudden, something crashed through the windshield, and my dad grunted like something hit his stomach. My mother kept driving for what felt like forever, probably just 30 seconds, as my dad kept saying, "Pull over, please pull over." And when they finally did pull over and stop the car, my dad said, "Oh my God, it's a sledgehammer." We got a ride to the hospital many miles away. He was fine except for bruised ribs and glass shards around his face and arms. We had, and still have, no understanding of where it came from. An airplane? Bounced off the top of some big truck that might have passed us that we didn't notice? Fortunately, it was a half-sized sledgehammer, not full weight. The sheriff wanted to keep it for evidence, which always bugged me. It's quite a trophy to have on a wall somewhere. I swear, my favorite place in the world. It's an absolute true story. Two massive against-the-odds shots have happened in my life that I can think of. One day, I was learning how to play golf with my dad. We went to a local park, stuck a jumper down about 200 feet away, and just tried to hit balls in the general area. My dad was good. He would always land on what would have been the green if we had one. I finally hit a ball that flew on the tee, but wildly, and I mean wildly, of course. My dad had happened to swing at the same time. Our two balls collided mid-air, and his ball sent mine in the right direction and rolled up about 2 yards away from our makeshift pin. He played it coy and cool. My mouth just dropped, and I couldn't stop laughing. Second time, also with my dad, I was somewhere in the region of 7 to 9 years old, I guess. My parents had hired a holiday cottage for them, and my sister and I had a little week-long getaway. It was right on the other side of the country. My dad and I went for a quick walk to the local shops when we first arrived, just so my dad could also get his bearings on this little village we were in. On this walk, we passed a phone box, and the phone was ringing. I wanted to answer, but my dad suggested we leave it and carry on our way, which we did. On the way back, it started to ring again. This time he looked at me and said, "Okay, go on then. Let's see what they want," or something to that effect. He picked it up, and I've never seen him look so baffled, confused, shocked, and stumble and stutter his own words so much, as well as laugh out loud. This confused laughed so repeatedly. So on the other end of the line was my uncle, who had not come on holiday with us, and had apparently forgotten we were even away on holiday that week. He had been trying to ring our actual home's landline number, not the cottage, our real-life home phone number. He seemingly got a couple of the digits the wrong way around in both the area code and the actual number through a fat finger, and it just so happened that those little mix-ups ended up being the numbers for this phone box over on the other side of the country that we happened to be walking past at the time. I didn't really get the big deal at the time. I was considerably younger. But I just remember my dad being absolutely blown away by the freak nature of it. And when we got back to the cottage, he was telling my mom and her, absolutely refusing to believe it, to the point it caused some kind of weird fight between them. They never fought, and never in front of me and my sister. My mom ended up calling my uncle, it's her brother, and she still refused to believe it. Over the course of the afternoon, she seemed to soften to it. I think maybe because I had seen it and witnessed it, I don't know. As I got older, I started to understand how much of a freak chance that was, even to the point where I doubted my own memory of it. Dad and uncle are still adamant, both bring it up a lot on various functions, always a mixture of awe and skepticism. I've been arrested on warrants for traffic tickets I already paid twice. The first one was quickly taken care of with an apology. I had the receipt in my glove box, and despite showing it to the arresting officer, he took me in anyway. When I showed it to the booking officer, he pulled up the reference number, saw someone fail to click a box or whatever, made a phone call, and sent me home with his regrets. The second one was a pain. That time the cop even said something was weird because the warrant was 12 years old, and from my hometown almost 2 hours away. I'd renewed my license twice since it was issued, which I shouldn't have been able to do. He said I'd have to take it up with the judge the next morning, so I spent the night in jail. I took an attorney and almost 2 years to clear everything up. My hometown is in the podunk backwoods of Texas, and getting someone to answer questions was nearly impossible. They claim the original records were destroyed in a flood, which I could never find any record of having happened. When it came down to it, they couldn't produce the original paper warrant, so it had to be dropped. But I had to pay for the lawyer and had absolutely no recourse. So I drive like a grandma now, and always get my inspection done early.